I don't know about you, but I've always heard that reading is good for kids. But how? What does it do for them? And how can we as parents step into good habits and maybe even step into good habits that make sense? Parenting is hard sometimes, and finding time in our day to read, and maybe even some of the guilt that comes with it if we're reading enough, can put us into dark places. But today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Face in the Dark, Dr. Kathy has some good insights on why we should read to kids and some helpful tips to do it in a way that's accessible. So let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Koch.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, the single act of reading aloud to kids can provide incredible benefits. That's really what we found in a number of different research initiatives and studies. A representative sample of nearly 10,000 4-year-old children. Of those, about 25% were never read to, and another estimated 25% were read to only once or twice weekly, according to data from the Early Childhood Longitudinal Study on Birth Cohort. This is a hard reality. A lot of recent studies celebrate the benefits of reading aloud to kids. And in fact, one recent study found that parents reading to their kids as young as 1 to 2.5 years old had those practices be a strong indicator of predictive later vocabulary, reading comprehension, and reading motivation. In another study, researchers tracked the impact of children whose parents read to them a minimum of 5 books daily from a very young age. These children entered kindergarten with exposure to around 1.4 million more words than children who were never read to. Variations in this reading practice referred to this as kind of the million-word gap. And that reality may explain later differences in children's vocabulary and reading development. Now, I have to say, it's often hard for parents to book out time for reading aloud to kids, right? Especially in today's world. I mean, I probably shouldn't say it like that. I guess that we kind of spend time on things we want to, right? Why should parents put things away that they think are important to read to their kids right now?
I appreciate the way you worded that. We do want to have a lot of compassion for our parents who want to get things right. This is fascinating. So for our listeners who don't know, my earned PhD is in reading education. And I spent 7 years as a professor of reading, meaning that I taught people how to teach children how to read. I did that prior to the Lord calling me into this ministry. So this is fascinating to me, and this is not news to me. As long as we have been alive, the best predictor of school success is listening vocabulary. And the primary source for children to get their listening vocabulary from is being read to. The second would be conversations, where we don't talk down to our children with baby talk, but we engage with them in real conversations. We must do this for the sake of our children. It's important straight across the board, Wayne, and it's especially important in families that are lacking support. So in our, in maybe a single mom was overwhelmed, maybe a family without a lot of extra money, if you will, they have fewer devices, they have what they think they have fewer opportunities for their kids, but actually in those families, you talk more, you read more, and you just need a library card to do that, and your kids will succeed. So that's something that could kind of balance the system, if you will. The other thing that's very significant about reading to children is this is where they feel secure. When you start reading a book to a son or a daughter, they know you are all theirs. And it's very rare that a phone call would take you away from that encounter where Josiah's on your lap and you're reading at nap time or bedtime or just at some fun time. So they know they're important in those moments. And if you look at the research, they feel very, very secure. And when they feel secure with dad and secure with mom, that's now who they turn to in times of need. We must read aloud to our children of all ages all the time.
I have always kind of wanted to read more to my kids. I think that every parent would say that, right?
Yeah.
I read to my kids, but I want to read more. I want to give more time. But I found myself oftentimes kind of going back to the same old books. I wrestle with what books I should be reading to our kids, right? Whether it's the Chronicles of Narnia or the little kid books. Inevitably, sometimes I feel like they might get bored or they don't really remember the concepts that I'm kind of reading to them. What kind of books do you think we should be reading to our kids? And Is there some kind of expectation on information that they should pull from that? Should we quiz them after we're done reading, or should we just let reading be something that we just do with them? I've kind of wrestled with that. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I love this question. I think every parent and grandparent wrestles with the same thing. So first of all, let me say that there's a benefit of reading the same book over and over again. I watch TV shows I've already watched. My family watches White Christmas every Christmas religiously, if you will. We laugh before the joke is finished. We sing along with every song. There's tremendous joy and there's tremendous get-togetherness, if you will, in that. And so if your child has enjoyed a particular book, keep it on every Monday night as a cycle, and they will not be bored. It actually helps their comprehension a lot. Now, if you hate it, that's a problem because you don't necessarily like every book you read a 4-year-old, but it's beneficial for them to have that repetitive nature. Also, you don't need to test them. It's not about knowledge. Now, if you're reading to them part of a science chapter because they're maybe dyslexic and you read to them to help them they're following along while you're reading out loud, then do some assessment. What was the size of the ball that we just read about? But if you're reading for enjoyment and reading for recreational purposes, then no, just have a natural conversation about it like you would as you leave a movie theater. Do you have a favorite part, favorite character? What about the ending? Would you have ended it differently? What do you think? If you were to write the next book in the series, what would you write about? So you can have fun conversation, but it doesn't have to be who was the main character. In fact, I'm going to tell you something. One of the reasons that the research says that a lot of our children do not enjoy reading is that they're assessed on every book they read in school. And I'm going to tell you something, Wayne, you and I own a lot of books, but if I had to take a quiz at the end of every chapter, I wouldn't be reading as much as I read. It would take away a lot of the joy and the personal fulfillment. So let's be careful of that. Two other things to recognize about reading aloud to children. One is read books above their grade level. So if they're a first grader, read books above their grade level. That's why they get their listening vocabulary. Now they know they have words in their head that will help them. And you don't have to know that for sure. A librarian can help you, but just get a guess. And then one more thing that I think is super important, and that is if you have logic smart kids, read nonfiction. So if our listeners are aware of what I teach about the 8 different smarts we have, those of us who are logic smart, we think with questions and we love it when the world makes sense. I don't want you to read me a book about a dinosaur playing baseball. Dinosaurs are not alive right now and dinosaurs cannot play baseball. So I'm thinking my mom is stupider than I thought she was because she's actually thinking that there's a dinosaur that can play baseball. And so if I'm a very logic smart kid, I want to read a book about a dinosaur. I want to read a book about a frog and a toad, not a story about the frog and the toad who go fishing, because my little brain is like, that's not possible. For a season, we all like fantasy, but some kids grow out of it faster. Watch for that and then read to them books that are full of information because that's how God wired your kids.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy, I think that's so true. I find myself in that too, just wanting to read the books that I think are interesting. And then I do have a logic smart kid that I'm thinking, oh man, this is going to be a little bit different. But we found joy in finding the books that are like that 20 random facts about this time in history.
Yeah.
And that's been so fun for us. And that's been a lot because you've kind of encouraged that inside of a lot of the work that you've done. And I want to kind of bring this up as we kind of get to this place of closing out the show. As parents, and I would even say like grandparents and those that work with kids, is there a best time for us to read to our kids? What kind of rhythms or habits would you recommend for, busy moms or dads or grandparents or those that work with kids to have kind of the greatest impact on kids when we do take this time and work to spend some time reading to them?
Being consistent is super valuable. A lot of people do it, of course, at bedtime. I've heard from a lot of moms that they lay down with their kids to read a book and they fall asleep by the 4th page. And the kid is nudging mom. Mommy, finish the story. So, bedtime might not work for all of our busy listeners. I think consistency is a real key. 1 or 2 stories at the end of a long day. It doesn't have to be in bed. It could be on the couch with all 5 of your kids. There's a lot of great read alouds that families with different age children can enjoy. Sometimes mom reads, sometimes dad reads, even maybe sometimes the 15-year-old reads to the 10, 7, and 4-year-old. I think that'd be cool. In the middle of the day as a quiet time break, I know of some moms who ask everyone in the family to quiet down at 1 o'clock or whatever, and maybe that's a good time when you read a part of a story. You let the kids doodle if they're picture smart. You let them maybe play with their shoelaces if they're kinesthetic in that way. You don't have to demand exact attention, but you read because it quiets us down. it ministers to our soul, I think, in a really unique way. And it causes that heart to beat for the security, like I mentioned earlier. So be consistent.
I'm guessing for many of you, as Dr. Kathy was talking, maybe that verse from Deuteronomy 6 popped into your head. It definitely popped into mine. It comes out of Deuteronomy 6, and I'm going to begin reading at verse 4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be in your hearts. Impress them on your kids. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your homes and on your gates. The rhythm that the Jewish people have in training their kids is really dynamic. It's something that I think kids kind of get this idea that God is real, God is active, and God makes himself known to them in so many ways that they read that into their culture, into their life, into society. They build societies that read into what God is doing. And I think this simple habit of getting a book out and reading to our kids can be a way that we teach them that knowledge is all around us, that there's different wisdom that they can pull out of different situations, and they can start to think and see things differently. I think that doing this and then highlighting some scriptural backing inside of the stories is building for them what I would call kind of tiny muscles, little muscles that they get this habit of always looking to see in the stories and the interactions and the dynamics of what they live, the reality that God is active and real in their life. I think teaching our kids to do that can help them shine bright light into dark times. And I think reading aloud to them can be a simple way that we can do that. So I want to encourage you today. Take some time tonight, today, maybe even have your kid read on your way to school or on the way to the grocery store. Getting them in this habit of interpreting and understanding the world is something that's really valuable and important for us to do. I want to thank you for listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast in this daily segment, Face in the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Koch, my name is Wayne Stender, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.